we have to remember that the selling of marijuana, it was grown at the house, cut up, put in a baggie, you grinded it down. You knew if it was an indica or a sativa, an indica in the couch, it was gonna put you to sleep, or a sativa that was gonna then promote an appetite, right? The two different types of strands. We've gotten into hybrids, super hybrids, the levels of THC. It has become such a nuanced process, something that's always been done. But now in the nuances have then allowed states then to structure ways to then remove Black people out of it. And so to me, not then giving up the licenses is because that is where the money is. If we keep marijuana as a crime, then it allows then for then the free labor of Black men in particular.
Let's embark on the Ark Republic to hear current news that's published. More than gossip and chatter, covering current affairs that matter. We talk issues with professional views, all keeping you in queue. We wanted a higher vibe for these days and times, to free the voices and minds, reporting the sign of the times, so all can build, let's shine, yeah.
Sherice, let's dive into something. We talk a lot of politics, and this actually has to do with everything political, but in a slightly different light. Let's talk about cannabis, right?
Yes.
And in particular,
or as we call it back in the hood, weed.
Okay? That marijuana, that
marijuana plant.
That weed, all of that kush.
Kush. I mean, my thing is, and the reason that I like to do that is we try to sexify what weed is. Like, it was seen to be grimy, dirty, nasty. And now all of a sudden, white boys have decided that they want to decriminalize it. And now we want to make it to be oh so beautiful and everything else. No, let's keep it to what it really is.
That weed, good ganja weed. Okay, so let's talk about cannabis. And what came up to me in our pre-show, we were talking, a business partner of mine sent a text message about 2 or maybe 3 weeks ago. And it said that 56 Black-owned businesses applied for a cannabis license in the state of New Jersey. What makes this interesting is Governor Phil Murphy said that he wanted to create a system where underrepresented people in the cannabis industry had a fair stake or an opportunity to really get into the business because of what we all know in terms of a lot of the incarcerations and a lot of crimes or criminalities have been connected to weed sales and the use of weed. However, out of the 56 Black business owners that applied, 0 were given the license. So I wanted to open up and talk about, like, where are we? Because you gave me some insight too as well in terms of how this discussion is going too.
Yeah, so we're originally from California, and I know the only Black license holder in California. So there's a lot of Black folks in California that work for cannabis or have partnered, but I know somebody who has a license. He'll remain nameless. And he made very clear to me that it is most profitable for him to then rent out his license versus trying to then run the cannabis. He has been raided several times. And let me say to you why. They have turned it into an FDA type of drug situation, so that there is high levels of testing that are required, right? So from cultivation from the cultivation of the flower all the way to the pipe that someone may put it in, there's all of these myriad of steps that many times Black folks cannot afford or to keep track of, right? We have to remember that the selling of marijuana, it was grown at the house, cut up, put in a baggie, you grinded it down. You knew if it was an indica or a sativa, an indica in the couch, it was gonna put you to sleep, or a sativa that was gonna then then promote an appetite, right? The two different types of strands. We've gotten into hybrids, super hybrids, the levels of THC. It has become such a nuanced process, something that's always been done. But now in the nuances have then allowed states then to structure ways to then remove Black people out of it. And so to me, not then giving up the licenses is because that is where the money is. Having the license then to be able to sell it makes you the distributor. So there's different types of licenses in California, which are also then being purported throughout. And this was first seen in Colorado. There's a grower's license, and then there's a distributor license. Most times, Black folks are only trying to get the distributor license, right? And this Black man that I knew was smart. He got a grower's license and a distributor license. And so
did he say what was the cost? Because cost is an issue too as well.
Well, he did it. He let me say it this way. He had an inside plug, as we say. And one of the reasons he had an inside plug is because he used to be the feds.
Got you.
And so that allowed him to hop in the industry way before anybody was talking about it. So he nonchalantly went and got a license when no one was really checking for who was getting them. And so he did nothing. I mean, he bought it. It was reasonable. It wasn't ridiculous. It was reasonable. He bought it and sat on it, or got it and sat on it. And then once he sat on it, and he was like the only Black person in the state of California with it, they tried to get him to partner with white people because they started putting a limit on licenses. And his license, and then they started kind of trying to come after him on renewals of the license and the paperwork and everything else. And so what we have to remember here is that in New Jersey, these 56 Black folks, from what I understand, were all trying to get distribution licenses and not grower licenses.
That's correct. And I do know, I actually got several emails from some growers, some Black growers in New Jersey, who said that they were in some type of co-op or some type of arrangement with white growers, and they all got kicked out of the co-op as people are nearing towards these licenses. Yes.
And that was going to be my next point, right?
Okay, we're on the same page then.
We're on the same page, because that's the next point, is that but when you are only going after distribution, number one, you're setting yourself up. So let me say it to you this way. Most people only go after distribution because distribution allows you to essentially get they're basically white labeling the weed, if that makes sense. Because they're responsible for testing it. They're responsible for testing it, to making sure it's coming up to state standards, all of that. And then you get to just put your logo and your packaging on it. You can talk about how the hybrids, the strands, and then now we're getting into infused oils, right? So now we're talking about then smoking the oils or then ingesting the oils. Before it was just flour. So one of the biggest reasons Black folks are not trying to go after the grower piece of it is because of all the testing that has to be done. They wanted to go after just the distribution because it allows you to slap your label on it and move on. Well, here's the issue, that the growers, or that if you're not going after trying to be getting a grower's license, or if you're not then bringing in Black farmers that have been doing the growing, then they then are then cut out of the distribution completely, right? And so that is why I've been telling Black folks, you have to then bring in the growers. When you go in, you have to bring in the growers. When you're going for the distribution license, you have to then partner then with someone who has a grower's license, because that will then fortify your argument about discrimination.
No, this is what you're saying is on point, because when you're in a state like New Jersey and you don't have a lot of Black farmers anyway, it's very difficult, right? We don't have any Black farmers, period. But it's
dismal in northern.
Correct. Yes. But in the attempts to even broker deals with, let's say, growers in North Carolina, which there's a burgeoning hemp and, cannabis growing, or THC versus CBD growers. But
North Carolina, Louisiana, let's remember Southern
Virginia,
University.
right? So yeah, and so
Right, is the first HBCU who has
that is very true. Yep. Yeah, you said that. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
so but shipping it, so then you have to deal with all the laws of how is it shipped and everything like that. So what you're talking about is that it moves from this very kind of like criminalization, which it's not necessarily basic, but it's just, cannabis is a Schedule I drug. Okay, you have these statutes around it, to this very complicated process of in the legalization of it that is very similar to me, this Nadir era where you had to take this voting test, and it was like 500 stupid ass questions, right? So to me, it's very similar to that.
Oh no, but it's intended to be so, right? It's intended to be so. So this is what I was saying to you, before we started the interview, that one thing I will credit Obama for doing in this aspect is he said, "Oh, Republicans, you guys love states' rights, right? Y'all love states' rights. Well, let's let the states decide when it comes to cannabis." Right. And if we look at the map, we will see there's only a handful of states that have not, in some ways, legalized cannabis, either for medical use or recreational use. And it's not by accident that most of those states are still Southern Confederate states that need, in many ways, like I call it, slave labor, right? Because the 13th Amendment says that slavery is disbanded as long as you don't commit a crime. And so if we keep marijuana as a crime, then it allows for the free labor of Black men in particular. So they're all connected, right? The nuanced level of the license, being able then to get a license, the idea of what's entailed to then distribute, the rules around distribution, the changing nature of those rules, the fact that you need $500,000 oftentimes to even get in the game, because you need to have this level of insurance that the United States is not providing, insurance that's often coming from Europe, right? Because it's still like you said, a Schedule I drug on the federal level, which means they can't be insured. Financial vehicles that have to be established to then be able then to take cannabis, right? In California, you cannot pay for cannabis with a credit card or debit card, right? Because then they can't do anything with the money. It's all a liquid game. It's all cash, right? And then what do you then do with all of this cash on hand? Because you cannot put it in a bank because of the FDIC. So there are all of these mirrored layers. And my sister was an accountant for cannabis in California, and I got a up close and personal look at it, right? That's how I was able to find out about these growers and understand how intricate it is. And that's why I think that David Scott out of Georgia, who's in a state that hasn't legalized marijuana or has not allowed it to then be use it for medical use, has said we need to pull the covers back on this completely, because now Black farmers who are participating in growing in cannabis are being locked out of the industry, an industry that we know that has proven to wreck and destroy Black folks' lives. And so we are seeing some Black representatives step up to this plate. I think that we need to also be concerned about their safety, because I think that this is the tech boom, right? Cannabis is the next emerging industry here in the United States. It is the boom, and as we know, in any budding industry, white folks love to corner the market.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Arc Republic. If you like what you see and you like what you hear, you can actually keep this mothership going. How? You can make a tax-deductible donation in several ways. One, Cash App us at Arc Republic Media. And you can also go on our website, arcrepublic.com/donate. As well, you can also donate to our fiscal sponsor and our sister organization at Black Farmers Index, that is Cash App, or also go onto their website, Black Farmers Index. narcotic.com. We are two Black women-owned media organizations who share our profits so folk can thrive.
Good points. And let me just say this with the David Scott, and I'll tell you some very real stories I've heard from Black farmers who, grow hemp. But David Scott said this past Thursday, there was a meeting to discuss small businesses and Black entrepreneurs and the issues that they're facing in a post-pandemic America. And also there was a segment that was cut out to talk about the severe issues in terms of these companies trying to have legal cannabis companies. And Representative David Scott, who is also over the agriculture, the Committee on Agriculture, and they're trying to push the next iteration of the Farm Bill. In particular, in this conversation, he says, here we are with the fastest growing agricultural product, that being cannabis, between hemp and cannabis. We're also going into our Farm Bill. We've got to address this issue. We can no longer hide it. And from what I understand, the vitriol that came after him was intense. But this is a continuum of vitriol, because Black farmers growers have reported to me that they have been harassed by local police, like they've gotten raided. They also other growers who are backed by local police, they have gotten harassed. Things, perhaps, I've even heard there's suspecting that some of their equipment got stolen or land got damaged. These are very real things. So this is what I'm talking about, this nadir era, what we're happening like after the Reconstruction era, when Black people are taking hits, and we're taking hits in all sorts of ways. So it's like, okay, we have the company, we have the lawyers, we have all these things in place in order to get it, but we're still not getting it. And at the same time, there's this underbelly of harassment and brutality and discrimination and so on and so forth that's going on.
And my thing is, I think that this is something, and this may sound horrible, but I think this is something Black folks are ready to go to war over. I think we've been docile on other things, but this in particular, I believe we're ready to go to war over. And I think if we were to, I think this is the next, right? This is the next major Black Wall Street opportunity for Black folks. Is this, and here's why: because cannabis plays a role because of the medical implications, right? And because we're not just talking about CBD, we're talking about CBD and THC, the healing power of THC. We're also talking about hemp, right? So we're talking then about holistic medicines that also come up this. We have to remember, we talked about opioids in the previous segment, right? And we talked about then opioids and how they come from poppy seeds. We are talking about a holistic, we're talking about a potential holistic medicine that doesn't need as much refinement as other other non-synthetic drugs, right? And so Amali, right, is synthetic, whereas cocaine, marijuana, they're not synthetic drugs, right? They're coming then from plants and growing them. So what I'm saying to you is that we as Black people, I think, are prepared to fight over this one, right? I think the question is how to fight. How to fight, I think, is the issue. And I don't think that I don't think that we are united enough to be clear about how to fight. And so I think we're just going to start seeing skirmishes pick up around the issue as it proliferates.
Right. And so we've got to come up with a strategy that is more holistic, because right now I think I would say in the past, we saw a lot of efforts to decriminalize marijuana from a legislative perspective, right, or more in the social justice perspective. But we've got to think about these economic aspects of it, and as well as you're talking about healthcare and well-being. And you mentioning Southern University, before you said it, I said this will be a really great opportunity if you had HBCUs partnering with Black companies. But if you have these states that still, have not legalized cannabis, where a lot of HBCUs are located, it becomes this issue. Right.
And I was getting ready to tell you that. So you have to remember that there's 23 land grant institutions. All of them are in Southern states. Let's run them down for you. Southern, Fort Valley's in Georgia. They haven't legalized. Alabama State, Alabama A&M is Alabama A&M is the land grant in Alabama. Alabama hasn't legalized. If we talk
Tennessee.
about if we talk about Tennessee, right? The land grant there is Tennessee State. They haven't legalized. Like, so if you start to see the cascading of it, it becomes very clear to you, right, why then they are hamstringing these agricultural centers. HBCUs, when it comes to farming, one of the biggest reasons we are seeing a decrease in farming is connected then to the lack of funding that's being provided at the state level to the land grant institutions. And so that's why I tell people all the time, even if you're not attending an HBCU, it is at the center of Black culture as far as its production of the educated class, and then even the farming class, and not just the educated class, those that are around the institutions as far as employment. All of those things lead in, and I think, Kaya, you have accurately identified. Right, Southern has broken ground on it. They have they're a state school, and that was what helped them in many ways broker the deal. But they brokered the deal while a Democrat was governor. My question really is, when it comes to Southern, what's going to happen in the election next year for this governor? Not this year, but next year for the governor. He becomes a lame. After this cycle is over, he's a lame duck governor. What's then going to happen? Is Louisiana going to, quote unquote, keep a Democratic governor that is then going to encourage these types of partnerships, or are we going to see, right, a Brian Kemp or a DeSantis in Louisiana that shuts this completely down?
Yeah, that's going to, excuse me, that's going to be very problematic, because therefore, I would say when the CBD in the Trump era, when it emerged, a lot of Black farmers switched to hemp as a way to make money, but now are in this quagmire and are like, okay, well, now we're not going to grow hemp for, medicinal uses or, those type of consumptions, but maybe we can switch and use hemp for fiber, even because it actually was the first textile, was the first plant was used for textile in the United States, and actually was the first cash crop. But another issue that is
cotton became king, right? But cotton became king because it was easier than to cultivate, right? So cotton replaced hemp because it was easier to cultivate. It spun easier, meaning that when you used the raw material of cotton, it was softer, which meant that it was easier to use as a textile because it spun easier. And then with the creation of the cotton gin, it then made it so that it became like gold almost. And so so hemp was the first. Many people are not familiar with this, but hemp was the first, and it quickly then was replaced by cotton because of how much easier it was to cultivate it.
But also hemp had a whole bunch of other uses too, as well.
A whole hell of a lot. A whole hell of a lot.
Yeah. So, but I also wanted to say, excuse me.
No problem.
Hold on. I got this damn heater on. Hold on. Shit. Welcome. Hot. I don't know why I didn't have my damn water near me.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
But you're great at cutting these, so you'll cut all that out.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah. But lastly, I just wanted to say, excuse me. Lastly, I wanted to say the shortages are already being experienced by farmers. Let me say that again. Hold on. Shit. Okay. So lastly, I want to say is that the farmers are already experiencing the shortages with the fertilizer. So a lot of Black farmers are talking about this issue and the requirement. So this hemp industry is in a precarious situation.
Yeah, and I'll close, I think, with this is the idea of we as Black people and as farmers and as Black people, period, right? We are in a quagmire when it comes to business. And so oftentimes we have these bootstrap conversations about pull yourself up. Well, if I can't get the fertilizer, we're industrious, right? Which then means we will then find ways to then create and grow our own fertilizer. but then that puts us further back in the production process, which then allows then for white farmers to be far more successful. Why do you think that Bill Gates has gotten into the farm industry all of a sudden, right? One of the biggest reasons that you're getting into the farm industry is not only to control food consumption, but it's also then to be able to control this growing industry known as cannabis, hemp, CBD, and THC.
And also just agribusiness in general too, as well, because if you have somebody like a Bill Gates entering into he can change the market. He can flip the market. And particularly from what I understand, I found out a lot of the land is in South Carolina. I think ancestrally that is very interesting. I hope every ancestor raises up wherever that land is. But so you are so right about that. And also what a lot of people don't know, and I have confirmations from people in the USDA, is that this whole monocrop commercial crop has plummeted. And so there's going to be a shift or an announcement of a shift shortly. I don't know what that means in shortly, but it must be a shift to more medium or mid-sized, smaller regional farming tactics and measures. So get with your farmer, get with your local farmer, because that is exactly what the United States is moving towards.
Yeah, and this is where we get in trouble in connecting world events, is that they're moving towards that. Yet if we get into a too prolonged or protracted engagement in Europe, a lot of those things will be put on hold, because we'll need to then take into consideration what we need agribusiness for, and what we may need it for may change due to heightened tensions throughout the world. And so I'm not saying that there's not an intention to do so and that it won't happen. But I think when you're talking about what shortly means we need to see how the climate of international conflict plays out before we commit ourselves and then have to flip flop and go back.
I mean, what you're saying is it might be back to victory gardens for all we know, So
it may be.
Okay, get ready to grow your basil and your sage.
Yeah.